Here's the thing. You are probably not broke because you buy coffee. You just feel guilty because coffee is visible, easy to blame, and always sitting there in your hand when the shame kicks in. Meanwhile, the stuff actually crushing your finances is quieter, bigger, and already built into your life. You know the moment. It's 7:38 in the morning. You're tired. Your phone battery is dying. Work is already annoying. And you tap your card for a $5 latte you know you technically could have made it home. And right away, that little voice shows up. This is why you can't save. This is why your account never grows. This is why retirement feels impossible. That's the story people love to tell. Stop buying little treats, become more disciplined, and your financial life will magically fix itself. Look, that sounds smart. It sounds mature. It sounds like the kind of advice successful people give from clean kitchens with perfect lighting. But for most Americans, it's just not true. And deep down, I think a lot of people know it's not true. They just keep repeating it because it feels better than admitting the real problem. Meet Danielle. She's 34, lives outside Atlanta, works in healthcare operations, and makes $72,000 a year. On paper, she looks fine. She's not reckless. She's not blowing money in Vegas. She's not buying designer bags every weekend. She's not doing anything that would make a financial guru point at her and say, "Well, obviously, that's the issue." She's just living what most people would call a normal adult life. Her rent is $1,850. Her car payment is $468. Insurance is $171. Utilities and internet are $240. Student loans are $290. Her phone is $95. Gas is around $180. Groceries are supposed to be $500, but they usually land closer to $650 because real life is never as neat as a spreadsheet. Then there's everything else. Copays, birthday gifts, parking, laundry detergent, dog food, the random Target run that somehow becomes $94 even though she walked in for one thing. And yes, she buys coffee a few times a week, maybe $80 or $90 a month. But that's not what's making her feel poor. What makes her feel poor is that every month is already spoken for before it even begins. There's no room, no cushion, no slack, no shock absorber. One weird bill, and the whole system starts wobbling. One dental issue, one higher utility bill, one insurance increase, one bad week with takeout, and suddenly she's moving money around, watching due dates, and promising herself next month will be different. That's the latte lie. The latte lie says your financial stress comes from tiny daily pleasures. It says if you were just a little more disciplined, a little less indulgent, a little more optimized, you'd finally get ahead. But for most people, the actual problem is not the occasional $6 coffee. It's the expensive life structure wrapped around it. And this is where people get tricked, because the small stuff feels emotional and immediate. The big stuff feels normal. You feel the coffee purchase. You don't feel your rent every day. You feel the snack. You don't feel the fact that your car quietly drains you through payment, insurance, gas, maintenance, registration, and depreciation all at once. You feel guilty over brunch. You don't feel guilty enough about carrying a fixed cost structure that leaves you no room to breathe. That's why the coffee story survives. It turns a structural problem into a character problem. It says you're not under pressure because modern life is expensive. You're under pressure because you lack discipline at 8:12 a.m. And that message is weirdly comforting, because if the problem is just coffee, the solution feels simple. Painful, but simple. Skip the treat. Be better. Win. Except the math does not care how tidy the story sounds. Most people are not getting crushed by what they buy once in a while. They're getting crushed by what they agreed to every month. That's the difference between occasional spending and recurring structure. Occasional spending is emotional, visible, and easy to judge. Recurring structure is boring, hidden, and financially decisive. One is what people talk about. The other is what actually shapes your life. And honestly, this is the part a lot of finance advice just refuses to admit. If the biggest pressure points in your life are housing, transportation, debt, insurance, and the cost of keeping your normal running, then blaming coffee is like trying to cool a house fire with a spray bottle. It may make you feel proactive, but it does not solve the real problem. Danielle learned that the frustrating way. She had her "New Year, New Me" phase. No coffee out. No snacks. No delivery. No impulse buys. She became incredibly disciplined for a few weeks. She packed lunch. She used the grocery app. She started saying no to tiny conveniences that used to make hard days feel manageable. And yes, she saved a little. But then her rent renewal jumped. Then her power bill spiked during a bad month. Then her car needed work. And suddenly all that heroic effort felt tiny. That's where a lot of people give up. Not because they're lazy. Because they did what everyone told them to do, and it barely moved the needle. So they conclude budgeting doesn't work. Saving doesn't work. Personal finance is fake. Wealth is for other people. But that's the wrong lesson. The real lesson is this: your financial life is built more by recurring structure than by occasional treats. That's it. That's the whole game. Recurring structure means the bills that come back every month, whether you feel motivated or not. Rent, car payment, insurance, debt, phone plan, childcare, the cost of living where you live, the cost of the habits you normalized, the cost of the life you designed, or more often, drifted into. And that drift is a bigger part of the story than people realize. Most people do not consciously build an expensive life. They inherit one piece by piece. A nicer apartment because you deserve peace. A newer car because you need something reliable. A better phone because you use it every day. Furniture financing because adulthood is supposed to look put together. 3 more subscriptions because everyone has them. More dinners out because you're busy now. Better clothes because your career is getting serious. Better groceries because you're trying to be healthier. More convenience because you're tired. Every single one of those choices can feel reasonable on its own. That's what makes this so dangerous. People rarely wreck their finances with one dramatic mistake. They do it through 100 ordinary decisions that all felt socially acceptable at the time. That's how you end up stuck. Not through chaos. Through normal. And normal in America is expensive. That's why so many people make decent money and still feel behind. They think they have a spending problem when what they really have is a margin problem. Margin is the gap between what life costs you and what life pays you. It's breathing room. It's what lets an emergency stay annoying instead of becoming a crisis. It's what allows savings to happen automatically. It's what lets you invest without feeling like you're starving your present self to fund some distant future. It's what keeps one flat tire from emotionally ruining your week. Without margin, everything becomes emotionally loaded. Every purchase feels suspicious. Every mistake feels bigger than it is. Every little pleasure comes with guilt attached. And that is exactly why the latte gets blamed. Because when people live with low financial margin, they start looking for visible symbols of what's wrong. And the coffee is right there. But the coffee is usually not the disease. It's the symptom. Sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's just the one tiny comfort left in a day full of pressure. That's another reason the advice feels insulting. Because for a lot of working adults, that latte is not some reckless luxury. It's a ritual. It's a break. It's a reward squeezed into a routine that otherwise feels like responsibilities stacked on responsibilities. So when someone says, "If you really cared about your future, you'd stop buying that," what people hear is, "The problem is your one tiny pleasant moment, not the giant financial machine draining you every month." No wonder that advice gets eye rolls. Now, to be fair, small spending does matter. Awareness matters. Habits matter. If you spend mindlessly every day, that does add up. But people massively overestimate how much small spending can do when the big structure is wrong. Saving $80 or $100 a month on coffee and convenience spending is not useless. It's good. Keep it. But it is not powerful enough to rescue a life built around too many fixed costs. It's a support strategy, not the main strategy. It's the side dish, not the meal. And this is where people confuse discipline with leverage. Discipline is valuable, but leverage is what changes your life. Leverage means making the moves that have outsized impact. A cheaper housing decision, a smarter car choice, killing high-interest debt, lowering insurance, avoiding lifestyle inflation when your income rises, setting up automatic savings once you finally have room. Those are leverage moves. Those are the decisions that can free up $200, $400, $700 a month without requiring you to fight yourself over every little thing. That's what people miss. The biggest money wins often come from one or two structural decisions, not from 1,000 tiny heroic acts. Think about how backwards most people's strategy is. They'll spend hours trying to save $30 on groceries and never question the apartment that's costing them hundreds more than they can comfortably carry. They'll shame themselves over takeout while driving a car that is quietly draining their future. They'll debate every small purchase while renewing insurance, phone plans, and subscriptions on autopilot. That is not because they're dumb. It's because the small stuff feels active and the big stuff feels already decided. And that's a huge trap. Because once something becomes normal, people stop evaluating it. The rent is the rent. The car is the car. The payment is the payment. The problem is that normal is often where the money disappears. Let's say Danielle saves $90 a month by cutting coffee, snacks, and random convenience spending. That's just over $1,000 a year. Helpful. But now compare it to a different set of moves. Switching insurance and saving $45 a month. Dropping things she barely uses and saving another $35. Refinancing or killing off a bad debt payment and freeing up $110. The next time her lease is up, finding a place that's $250 cheaper. Suddenly, without becoming a joyless robot, she has freed up more in 1 month than coffee austerity was going to save in 3 or 4. That's the reveal nobody talks about because it's less catchy than "skip the latte." But it's way more honest. One good fixed cost decision can do the work of months of tiny sacrifices. And once people feel that, their whole psychology changes. Because now their money plan is not based on constant friction. It's based on design. They don't have to wake up every day and prove they deserve financial progress by denying themselves something small. The structure itself starts working better. That's the real goal, by the way. Not to become a person who never spends. To become a person whose money system is not fighting them every day. A lot of personal finance content quietly sells this fantasy that wealth is mostly built through endless self-denial. But that's not how it feels in real life. In real life, wealth is built through alignment. Income, fixed costs, debt, savings, time. Habits matter, yes, but habits are most powerful when the bigger system makes sense. And if the bigger system doesn't make sense, tiny habits start to feel like punishment. That's why so many people say they feel broke even when their income looks decent. Because they're not poor in the old-fashioned sense. They're compressed. Their money is under pressure from too many directions at once. Their life requires precision. Their whole system assumes nothing goes wrong. And life always goes wrong. So if you want to actually get ahead, the question is not, what tiny pleasure can I remove next? The question is, what in my life is expensive every month whether I'm happy or not? That question changes everything, because it forces you to look at the categories big enough to matter. Housing, transportation, debt, insurance, the invisible monthly stuff that slowly became normal without being necessary. It forces you to ask whether your lifestyle fits your income, not whether your morning coffee fits some internet guru's morality play. And yes, those bigger questions are less fun. A lot less fun. Nobody wants to sit down and admit the car is too much, or the apartment is too much, or the subscriptions are out of control, or that every raise so far has quietly been absorbed by lifestyle creep instead of building wealth. Those conversations are uncomfortable because they're tied to identity, status, adulthood, convenience, reward, image. That's why people would rather just cut coffee. Coffee doesn't challenge who you think you are. Selling the car might. Moving apartments might. Admitting your version of normal is too expensive might. But that discomfort is usually where the breakthrough starts. And look, this does not mean you need to become extreme. It does not mean live like a monk, never have fun, and optimize every molecule of your existence. It means understand trade-offs. If expensive coffee genuinely brings you joy and your bigger categories are under control, great. Keep it. If a nicer apartment saves you commuting time and improves your daily life enough to justify the cost, maybe that trade-off works. If a gym membership protects your health and keeps your head straight, that is not a meaningless luxury. The point is not to eliminate spending. The point is to stop spending by default. That's different. Mindless spending makes people poor. Misaligned fixed costs make people poor. Debt that eats tomorrow to support today makes people poor. Lifestyle creep that quietly inflates with every raise makes people poor. But intentional spending on things you actually value, inside a structure that leaves you margin? That's not the enemy. In fact, that's the point of getting your finances under control in the first place. So money stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like a tool. And honestly, that's why the latte myth is so damaging. It makes people think the path to freedom is mostly about deprivation. But the real path is usually much less dramatic and much more boring. It's paperwork. One cancellation. One phone call. One smarter renewal decision. 1 year of not upgrading. One awkward conversation. One big category brought back under control. That doesn't sound sexy. But that's where the money is. Danielle eventually figured this out. Not all at once. Not in some cinematic weekend reset. She just got tired of fighting tiny battles that never solved the bigger problem. So she audited the categories that mattered. She looked at her fixed costs instead of obsessing over every snack. She stopped asking, how do I become more disciplined in the smallest category? And started asking, where is my money disappearing every month no matter what I do? That shift changed everything. Not overnight, but for real. Because once you lower the cost of your normal life, good habits finally have room to work. Saving stops feeling fake. Investing stops feeling impossible. Emergencies stop feeling like identity crises. And, maybe most importantly, you stop attaching moral panic to every small purchase. So no, the $5 latte is probably not what's keeping you poor. What keeps people stuck is a far more expensive combination of high fixed costs, debt normalization, lifestyle creep, and the quiet pressure to make your life look stable even when it isn't financially strong. And once you see that, you stop playing the wrong game. You stop trying to win financially by becoming a slightly guiltier person. You stop measuring progress through tiny acts of deprivation. You stop making yourself miserable in the cheapest categories, while the most expensive parts of your life keep running on autopilot. Instead, you go where the math actually is. You lower the cost of your normal life. You create margin. You stop letting small guilt distract you from big numbers. You make fewer but better decisions. And suddenly your future stops feeling like something that belongs only to other people. That should feel motivating, because it means your life is probably not being destroyed by one coffee. It means the problem is bigger, yes, but the solution is bigger too. More powerful too. More honest too. You do not need to eliminate every small pleasure. You need to stop letting small guilt distract you from big math. That's where the money is. That's where the relief is. And that's where you finally stop feeling broke, even before you feel rich.